Hey y'all, welcome back to Progressive Politics. To discuss progressive politics.
Question 820 is up in smoke. The petition to make adult use marijuana legal in Oklahoma fails to make it onto the November ballot. Before we go into this, I'm just going to say this. This is bad. This is really, really bad. And the way that I say this is not just because for marijuana, but if you look at state questions going from here on out, that's one of the only ways that we've been able to pass incredible progressive policies.
Well, we know Stitt didn't want this on the ballot because that would improve voter turnout on the November election.
What it seems like is that definitely this was like intentional. I've talked to multiple people who have been involved in the marijuana petition, and initially what folks were hearing was that Stitt was actually pretty agnostic to it. So like he didn't really feel strongly either way. That's kind of why maybe O'Connor wrote the ballot link title that wasn't so bad that the campaign accepted it. But I think really what happened is after that polling came out the other week, showing it all tightening, showing Walters falling behind, I think like the Republican Party apparatus was like, hey man, you gotta get this thing off there because of the turnout.
They're freaked out. Like having any form of populistic issue on a general election ballot is the worst thing that could ever happen for them. I mean, 2018, whenever you saw medical marijuana was on the ballot, you even had areas like, at the time I was doing a race that was in CD5, and in CD2 you would have more people showing up in their Democratic primary just because of marijuana.
It was the highest turnout primary in history. But to give you a little bit of tea, what I'm hearing is that now they might try to dump this in a special in 2023. And I find that, again, that really makes the argument that they wanted it off the ballot for turnout reasons, because it's like now we're going to like maybe dump it in the city council election, which is wild, or just some other random election in 2023, because now, and that's what Fallon did with medical marijuana, right? Like she could have put it on the November ballot, but she put it on the primary to mess that election up.
So a random surprise for Oklahoma. Oklahoma Medicaid, also known as Sooner Care, ranks number 1 in the nation for signups. A rare win for Oklahoma State Services.
The thing that's interesting about this is that the release, and so this was the federal government who is analyzing this, so they're looking at all the different states, and we're the only state to process 100% of applications in less than 24 hours during the first 3 months of 2022.
Wow.
So, like, there was a story that came out not too long ago comparing us and Missouri, who also expanded Medicaid, and we've had like 300,000 people enroll in Medicaid, and in the same period of time, like Missouri had like 20,000. So like reducing barriers to accessing services like works.
Yeah, the time that government did its job using federal and state tax dollars.
Oh
yeah.
You guys, we're top 10 in something.
Oh my God, we're top 10 in something. Let's go.
Yes. Okay, he needs to put that on his resume.
Top 10 state. Top 10
next we're going to talk about Stitt's latest top 10 news story. So after multiple agencies, including state and federal law enforcement, failed to prevent the shooter at the elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, Stitt has decided to turn to law enforcement to fail in the exact same ways. Mission SOS, Secure Oklahoma Schools. Stitt is basically just training law enforcement to try and stop a shooter, which, what's ridiculous about that to me is like Uvalde wasn't just like the Uvalde Police Department that sucked, and so you could say like, oh, they just didn't have enough training. You know, the State Highway Patrol got there, the Border Patrol, a federal agency got there, and they all, like, by the end there was like 111 or 106 law enforcement agents on site at the school, and they still couldn't intercede to stop the shooter. I don't know why we keep doubling down on the same failed policies.
I just want to know, how are we going to secure Oklahoma schools when we already don't have enough money in the schools for, classrooms to have enough paper to last the entire school year? Seems like we can only find the money if we need guns or something like that. It's so disheartening that, like, to battle mass shooters, we're like, let's use this app. Like, That's the best we can do. It is a good idea. I agree. But it's just the fact is when a shooting starts, there's very little that can actually be done to stop it.
100%.
I was like, we can't like software our way out of this.
No.
Yeah, this is more of a reaction than a precaution.
So her name is Olayemi Alurin. Did this great piece on abolition, and I just thought it was worth listening to.
It's a vision of tomorrow. We currently have a massive prison industrial complex. This is a country that once went from 200,000 people, maybe nationwide, being in prison to now 2 million people. More prisons begets more prisons. They make more. The more we incarcerate, the more they continue to incarcerate and police these same kinds of communities.
Because there was a big row on left Twitter and like the Young Turks who have been coming out recently as sort of pro-police and because there's like this rising crime and saying we got to do something with all these criminals or whatever. But like the reality is like we've been doing that for 40 years. The war on drugs, mass incarceration, all these things. Like if that stuff worked, we should have no crime, and yet we still have it.
And this is a good tweet that's further down in the thread. It says, any society that purposefully fails to meet the material needs of the people, but then invest in more policing is a police state.
100%. I mean, a lot of the reasons as to why crime and in most cases theft and stuff like that seems to go up is because we have to recognize like we're in a recession, right? I watched a video recently that says, what are the different signs of us being in a recession? Theft goes up, police funding goes up, the amount of chicken coops that you have in the inner city also goes up as well. People are trying to figure out how to resource themselves.
And not only are we in a recession, we're also in the intermediate stages of the climate crisis. Temperatures are rising. Natural disasters are happening more frequently and more intensely, and these most disproportionately displace people of color and low-income people.
I just think about it in our local context of the jail bond, right? I mean, we're willing to commit $300 million to a 50% larger jail after we're already the number one incarcerator on the planet. So it's like we're just doubling down on the same failed policies.
Everything is a transformative process, right? Whether it's creation, preservation, and transformation. Those are the three things that we always have. Right now, we are in the moment of honestly a kind of a mixture. Some people don't know what it's like to live in a police-free future. We don't know necessarily what it's like to live in a jail-free future because people have never been exposed to that. So you've really got to introduce the concept, and I think that's why she says it's a concept for tomorrow. At the same time, it's about demonstrating alternative methods, right? So we have I think back last year, OPN was working on the Make It Right project and presenting alternatives to policing, presenting alternatives to the jail. We've done work around that too, and just people just don't know. They just don't know, and it's an educative issue right now. I do think it's closer than we realize. And I think the perfect place to demonstrate that it can be done is here in Oklahoma.
Ryan Walters has emerged from his conservative cave to weigh in on some less interesting talking points. So he tweeted, Biden, Hoffmeister, and activists are actively taking over our classrooms. We need more parent involvement, more transparency in education, and ultimately we must put kids first.
Adam Latz, a professor of education history at Binghamton, remember that? University in New York, said he's been going through accounts from the 1840s about really very angry campaigns for parental rights in education. So it's basically making the argument that this happens ever so often. It's very much part of our history. And usually we move past it and those people kind of get left in the dust. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing. I think it's literally just an ego thing. He's quoted repeatedly in it, and there's a big long quote of his at the end. But
if you're going to try and scare people about the future, young people are a really convenient way to do that. And that's exactly what Ryan Walters does every single day. He's like, but the kids!
Yeah.
Meanwhile, has no idea what the kids are actually going through on a day-to-day basis.
Can I ask you a question?
What do you need?
How long do you think until they're saying, we're putting communist agendas in the schools?
In Oklahoma?
Well, then everyone loses their minds.
All right, y'all, last thing that we got today. So Jimmy Lankford gets biblical, but very weirdly. Let's take a look.
I believe that as these states embrace biblical truth as it pertains to life, that I believe God's going to bless those nations, those states.
As funny as it sounds, we've experienced a big drought in Oklahoma. The week after we passed this law to be able to protect the lives of children, we had the most overwhelming rainstorm that came across the state. And it was such an interesting conversation among people in the church, like, did that just happen?
Hold on, what?
Did
We did something for the kids and then it rained.
did that conversation just happen?
Okay, if he wants to play that game, I had the thought, oh, I wish it would rain, and then 30 minutes later it rained. So am I God, bitch?
Wow.
Like, fuck you.
Amazing.
The way they talk about Christianity is so smug. Like, he's sitting there with, like, no teeth showing, just like, it's disgusting.
Anna, don't you love being
Who's
a part
he?
of it? Like,
It means that our rain is always going to be sporadic. Whenever
Right.
it rains, it doesn't mean it has shit to do with anything you just did.
No.
see, this is why
It's
most
just
of us,
time.
we
Nonsense.
believe in science. It's
I
nice.
love science. They
Science
hate
is
it.
great.
Look at him. These men never heard of science.
I mean, this is like the Christian nationalism thing, and like the comparison that I really made was that, you know, everybody kind of freaked out about Jackson Lemire and how like he was like so, you know, Christian nationalist, but then this is James Lankford, right? I mean,
You've already got-
they're you know, he just says it in a weird sort of calming way. Like it's not any, he's still just as nonsensical, just as reactionary, just as bizarre.
Lankford just
What-
pisses me off because you want to yell at him, but like, you know, if you yelled at him in person, he'd just be like, I understand.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
hear you. Blah, 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 blah.
Dude, he's literally Skeletor. Like,
My deal is just like how patronizing, and like you were saying, they're so smug, but it's also like, say you really do believe strongly in your faith, like using this like trivial example of like we passed some, or the Supreme Court released a decision that they'd gotten leaked 4 months earlier, and then it rained, and somehow that's like God's divine. Like it's just such a trivializing of your like supposedly deeply held beliefs. Like I would be insulted.
Thank you for watching this week's Progressive Politics. We're almost at 500 subscribers, so if you could like, hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, all of that good stuff. Yeah, thanks. Bye.